What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM. Here today, episode 373 for Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave the comment that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Before I go any further, one quick cheap plug, actually multiple, I guess. We've had exclusive interviews going up every single week for the last couple of weeks now here on the channel. In 2021 alone, here on the channel, we've had exclusive interviews with Fandango, Apollo Crews, AJ Styles, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and now coming up tomorrow, Roman Reigns, the WWE Universal Champion, talking all about WrestleMania, his current heel run, facing The Rock at some point, getting new entrance music, keeping in contact with The Shield, and so much more. It was a really, really fun conversation. Roman Reigns was fucking great. So you can check out that conversation tomorrow, both on Bleacher Report in article form and in audio form right here on the channel. So if you haven't already, subscribe. You'll get new Q&A videos every single week like this one. You'll get exclusive interviews like that one every single week. You'll get WWE Network and Chill videos where I break down Raw Talk, Talking Smack, WWE Untold, WWE 24, WWE Chronicle, and everything else that goes up on the WWE Network. I also break down, WrestleRant radio excerpts go up on Thursdays, SmackDown reviews that break those down on Saturdays. So there's a lot worth subscribing for. So definitely subscribe now if you haven't already. Hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. One of the few channels that you'll find out there wrestling related that we do daily content. I've done a video every single day for well over a year now, probably longer than that. So again, if you're not already subscribed, I can't stress it enough, definitely do so. You will not be disappointed. So the first question for today's video comes from Hand Sanitizer, great name and timely, I guess, from YouTube. Their question was, just saw my boy Cesaro get a win against Daniel Bryan. Is Daniel Bryan just doing this because he wants good talent that's not being used to get a push, or is this SmackDown saying it's time for Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura type talent to get some love? That match was awesome. So that's my question too, and I don't think I can accurately answer this without seeing what the aftermath is going to be. Like Nakamura, I'm more faithful after seeing 2 weeks of TV, and even that's not really enough of an indicator, but after seeing 2 weeks of TV, I'm more faithful that Nakamura is on the right track to being a breakout babyface. Again, I say, breakout babyface, but he was in the fucking main, not the main event, but one of the main events of WrestleMania 34 for the WWE Championship. He's previously won a Rumble match. He's a former tag team, Intercontinental, and United States champion. So not really much of a breakout, but, getting another shot to succeed as a babyface. And I say that because he had a great showing in that gauntlet 2 weeks ago, and then he came out the following week, not only beating Jey Uso, but the real kicker was that he came out to his old entrance music, the awesome babyface music, The Rising Sun, that he used when he first came to WWE. So that tells me that they're finally going to push him as a babyface again, which gives me a lot of hope. Cesaro, I don't know. You make a great point, and I'm glad you referenced that, because a lot of people see that Cesaro went over Daniel Bryan and think, not a lot of people, but some people might be thinking, oh, WWE finally has plans for Cesaro. They finally realized how great this guy is, and they're finally going to utilize him as a single star, blah, blah, blah. I mean, how many times have we seen this with a guy like Cesaro, though? I go back all the way to 2014 when he beat Randy Orton on SmackDown, a clean win. I think Orton was the WWE champion at that time, too. It was a huge win for Cesaro, and people were thinking the same thing then. Granted, there was follow-up to that. He had an amazing match on Raw with John Cena a few days after that. I think he beat Daniel Bryan as well, which is, a major coincidence considering he just beat him again on Friday. But then he went on to have a great showing in the Elimination Chamber. He won the Battle Royal at WrestleMania. He became a Paul Heyman guy. And then it was all downhill from there. And they tried with Cesaro a couple times after that. He was a babyface for a while in 2015, 2016. He was getting a pretty significant push in 2015 before getting hurt. He got another significant push in 2016. Nothing happened there. He didn't get hurt or anything. They just put him with Sheamus. And then he was a tag team guy for the next 3 or 4 years, from 2016 all the way up until 2019. And then he started teaming with Nakamura, which has been cool. But I want to see him used on his own. I know the tag team division needs talent, and Cesaro and Nakamura are a good team, but I think SmackDown can really benefit from having these guys on their own, specifically at the main event level. They need more top-tier baby faces and heels, really. They have Roman Reigns. Owens is great. Bryan's on his way back up there, which is cool. But they need more beyond those guys, and I think Nakamura can be one of those people at the top of the card, in addition to Cesaro, whether it be as a heel or a babyface. So right now, I am thinking that it was more a case of Bryan just being generous and allowing Cesaro to beat him. Bryan is very fucking giving. And now I am faithful that Bryan might be pushing towards a Cesaro push. I mean, people say all the time, I think the WWE on Fox Twitter account a couple of weeks ago put up a tweet saying, who's the most underrated athlete in WWE? And not just fans, but people in the fucking company were saying Cesaro. And he was like, oh, thanks everybody, my notifications blew up again, blah, blah, blah. Look, we've heard it time and time again. But all this untapped potential stuff really means nothing unless WWE capitalizes on it. Could now be that time? That's the question. And I hope it is. Bryan, like I said, is a very giving dude. He didn't let Gran Metalik beat him, but he did push for Metalik to get that Intercontinental Championship match against AJ Styles on SmackDown last year. He was a big proponent of the Big E push, and so far that's worked out well. He was a big proponent, I think, of Otis a while ago. The New Day, Kofi Kingston. Obviously, he put over Kofi Kingston at WrestleMania. He let Murphy beat him a few years ago. He let fucking Rowan beat him a couple of years ago. And Rowan is no good. But, I mean, Rowan benefited from being with Bryan. They were that heel duo. Rowan got a SmackDown Tag Team title reign out of it. He was with Bryan going into WrestleMania. So he wanted to put over Rowan. He put over Murphy at one point. Obviously putting over Roman Reigns on multiple occasions. Putting over a lot of different people. Bryan loses to a lot more people than you would think. And I think Friday showed that. So I'm hoping it's not a case of Bryan just being generous and giving on his way out and putting over other talent. I think that's great. But I also want to see this amount to something and see Cesaro really go on to have major single success. Whether that will be the case or not remains to be seen. It's only 1 week. They could follow this up on Friday by either not having him on the show at all or by having him lose right back to Bryan or doing something dumb like that, you know. So I guess we'll see, but Friday did give me a little bit of faith that, I mean, you know, it should be stated that this was Cesaro's first major singles win in 4 or 5 years, because he's really been a tag team guy since 2016. So probably his first big win since, I would say, maybe 2016. And that's a fucking long time. So I remember he beat Del Rio, and that was a big win, considered a big win back then, considering Del Rio's a former world champion. He hasn't really been pushed since then on his own, so I'm hoping that this will be it. But again, I don't want to get my hopes up. Emmanuel A. also from YouTube. Is most of the WWE roster in mid-card purgatory, or would it be more accurate to say that upper mid-card purgatory? I'm expanding on last week's question about the longevity of modern wrestlers. There is the often discussed issue of WWE not producing big stars anymore, in spite of, or arguably because of, hot potato booking. Specifically, guys like Dolph Ziggler, Kofi Kingston, Sheamus, and The Miz each have loads of accomplishments, yet still only peak at upper tier level rather than top tier level. Why do you think so many WWE wrestlers peak at the upper tier level? I'm sure you can say that about a lot of stars today, Kevin Owens being one of them, and I hate to say that because I love Kevin Owens and I think he can be a world champion more consistently. He had that one long reign as world champion, a lot like Miz, a lot like Kingston, a lot like, Sheamus has had a few different world title runs, but no one that defined his career. I guess aside from the World Heavyweight Championship run back in 2012. I would argue that Sheamus is more of a main eventer than any of the other three guys that you just mentioned, and I'll get to why in a second. But Kevin Owens is a guy that also has loads of accomplishments, but is only really seen at that upper tier level. Sami Zayn doesn't have a ton of accomplishments. I don't think they ever really saw him as a main eventer anyway. AJ Styles, I would not put at that level. AJ Styles and The Shield, to me, feel like the only real, genuine, fresh faces. And I know AJ was 38 when he showed up in the company. But they feel like the only genuine, fresh faces in this company that can be considered genuine perennial main event players. Regardless of where they are in the card, they can main event a pay-per-view tomorrow, and it's believable. They can main event WrestleMania, and it's believable. Rollins, Reigns, Styles. I would put Ambrose in that category too, even though he's no longer there. All four of those guys, to me, are the only real stars they've built up in the last decade that feel like real main eventers and that can main event a pay-per-view tomorrow, WWE, AEW, and whatever, and it's believable. I can't really say that about anyone else in the last decade, despite whether they've held a world championship or not. Kevin Owens, for example, held a world title in 2016, 2017. I mean, yeah, he's been a part of a lot of world title programs since then. He hasn't held many of them. He doesn't feel like a top-tier main event guy the same way that AJ does and the rest of the Shield do because of his booking. The booking is exactly why a lot of these people do not feel more special than they do and why they don't feel as special as they should. I mean, there are obviously exceptions with people like Jinder Mahal. The booking obviously didn't do him any favors, but the guy was fucking terrible. I mean, he's a guy that should have never been WWE champion to begin with. I'm sorry, but Jack Swagger should have never been world champion to begin with. The guys that you mentioned, and I'm trying to think of other people in recent years that were at that level. Kofi Kingston, yeah, he was WWE champion 2 years ago, but I would put him in this category too, of people, like you said, Ziggler, Sheamus, Miz, Del Rio, Barrett. McIntyre finally broke through. It took him a fucking decade, but he finally broke through recently. Cody Rhodes up until he left anyway. I think of this crop of people from 08, 09, 2010, 2011 that they aggressively pushed. And Bryan, too, I guess, is another perennial main eventer where I could see him main eventing a WrestleMania or a pay-per-view and it's believable. That's another guy. I forgot about Bryan. He was out and he was in and out for so long I kind of forget about Bryan. But the Shield, Bryan, and AJ are the only guys I would put in that category. People like Ziggler, Kingston, Sheamus, Miz, Del Rio, Swagger, Barrett, all those other guys. To me, and McIntyre too, up until they finally pushed him correctly recently, they felt like guys that WWE really wanted to make new stars out of, because back in 09, 08, 2010, they were realizing, oh shit, all of our normal main eventers, people like Batista, Shawn, Jericho, Cena, did I mention Triple H? People like that, Edge, were all either on their way out or wouldn't be as full-time anymore. Cena still was, but everyone else, Jericho left in 2010, Edge retired in 2011, Orton was still full-time, but Shawn retired in 2010, Taker became a part-timer after 2010, Batista left in 2010. 2010 was really a turning point for the company where they realized, oh shit, we need new stars, so they put the belt on people like fucking Jack Swagger. And he should have never been world champion to begin with, but like Ziggler, he was built up well enough until I would say like 2011. They gave him that really quick world title run in 2011. And he was a guy, I mean, he won Money in the Bank. I would say his downfall was after 2013 when he cashed in Money in the Bank. And I think he could have really broken through as a perennial main event player after he won the World Heavyweight Championship the second time in 2013. But when they took the belt right off of him and then bumped him right down to the mid-card level, that was it for him. And they got one more shot in 2014 at Survivor Series, and then that was it. Ryback's another guy. Uber over, incredibly over in 2012. They gave him that one shot, and that was fucking it. Punk was another guy they made a star out of, although he was kind of already a star by the late 2000s. But he didn't really cement himself as a main event player, let's face it, until 2011. He was a multi-time world champion by 2011 and winning the World Heavyweight Championship a few times. He was the face of Friday Night SmackDown in 2009, but he wasn't on the level of a Cena until 2011. So he's another guy I kind of forget about too, considering he's no longer there. But the other guys that I mentioned, Ryback, they fucked up his booking and he never really recovered. Del Rio, another guy, I don't know if he shouldn't have been world champion. I always go back to when he won the world title the first time at SummerSlam 2011. He lost the belt literally a fucking month later by tapping out to John Cena at Night of Champions. Why the fuck would you do that? And listen, I'm not the biggest Del Rio fan now, and I really wasn't after that point because the booking ruined him. A lot of people found him boring, but I think he could have been another guy that was bigger than he was had he been booked better, in 2011 onward. Barrett was a guy they never really pulled the trigger on. Not the most exciting in-ring performer, but he was a genuine main eventer on the mic, and he showed that during that Nexus angle, and they never pushed him at that level, and he just suffered from just being at that mid-card level after like 2011 or so. Kingston, they finally pulled the trigger on in 2019. I think he could have been a main event player. I mean, Kingston, I don't know. I go back and forth on Kofi. I love Kofi. He never really screamed to me a perennial main event player. He screamed to me a guy that could have been a world champion at a certain point, and he finally was in 2019. Could he have sustained that momentum for more than just 6 months? Maybe if they booked him properly. The issue with Kingston was that they put the belt on him, had a great run, he was heavily protected, and then as soon as he lost the belt, he was literally back to tag team ranks within a week. That's the company's fault. Kofi doesn't feel as much of a main eventer to me as a Bryan or a Punk or a Rollins or a Reigns, but I think he could have worked at that level beyond 2019 had they booked him as such, but they fucking didn't. Miz, I think, again, could have been a genuine perennial main event player, and he's been a part of a lot of top-tier programs, but because of the booking, it's so hard, it's so start and stop with people like him. I mean, especially recently, he's won the Money in the Bank briefcase twice. Recently, it's been a complete fucking failure. His 2020 sucked. His 2021 so far has sucked. You know, he would be on the ascent in, like, let's say 2016, 2018, and they should have pulled the trigger at that point and put him back in the main event scene, and then they would just put him right back at the Intercontinental title level. It happens every fucking time. I don't know why they do it. Sheamus, he's a 4-time world champion. The first 2 reigns sucked. He was booked as a cowardly world champion. He won the title on a fluke in that tables match with Cena over 10 years ago, which would almost be 12 years ago at this point. It was in 2009. More like 11 because it happened in December in 2009, but you get my point. His first 2 reigns sucked. They never really proved that he was on the same level as a Cena or a Triple H, who he beat a few different times. But again, no one ever really took this guy seriously. He would always lose the belt right back to other people. He was never positioned as being on the same level as a Cena or an Orton. Everyone else I mentioned before, Rollins, Reigns, Styles, and Punk, were. I think all of them have scored clean wins over Cena at one point or another. Have all scored clean wins over Randy Orton at one point or another. The other people I mentioned really haven't. Some of them have at certain points, others haven't. But it just wasn't consistent. They picked up those big wins and the follow-up was there. With these other people, it just wasn't. Kofi and Dolph and Sheamus and Miz would all occasionally pick up the big win, but then they would lose immediately right after and then go right back to the fucking mid-card. It just makes no sense, you know? I don't know. I feel like that crop of competitors specifically, I always go back to that time period and think, man, there were a lot of people at that point that they really, and I was watching back then, so I can't really speak to like 05. Like 05, it really felt like they were trying to do that too with people like fucking Heidenreich and Mark Jindrak and Luther Reigns and Kenzo Suzuki, all these people they introduced back in 04-05, Rene Dupree. Some had more potential than others, but they all were gone from the company within a couple of years. These people are obviously still with WWE after a fucking decade, but it's still the same thing where the booking failed them. And some people, I mean, you know, Dolph Ziggler's a lot better than Luther Reigns ever was. But the idea, the bottom line is that they had this idea to push these people at a certain level. It didn't work out, mostly because of the booking, and then they just gave up and never really revisited that. The start and stop pushes, the hot potato booking, like you said, is really what killed these people. And they're not unsuccessful. They're all going to go in the Hall of Fame someday. But I still can't shake the feeling that they could have been bigger. All the people that you mentioned, and a lot more people that I can't really think of off the top of my head either. Ryback, Del Rio, people like that, Barrett. Thank God McIntyre finally broke through last year, but he's a very rare case. He's a very rare case. And hey, maybe he loses the WWE Championship soon, and then he goes right back to being at that mid-card level. I don't think so. He's been champion long enough, and he's been picking. I mean, Kofi Kingston never beat Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania. Drew McIntyre did. I feel like Drew McIntyre will be fine after he loses the championship. But you never know. With this company, you never know. So I don't want to say they've created no new stars, because again, they have Roman, they have Rollins, they have AJ, they did have Punk, they have Bryan now still, at least for a little bit longer. But it's sad to see how many people could have been bigger than they were, but they weren't because of the booking. His next question, and now I know I went on for a while about that one, but that's really, it's a great question, and it really has always bothered me because there were so many people in the last decade that could have been bigger but weren't for whatever reason. But Cody Rhodes was another one. Cody Rhodes was another. Damian Sandow to a certain extent, but Cody Rhodes could have been the guy that he is now 10 fucking years ago. I mean, Cody is killing it right now in AEW, but he could have been that same guy in WWE. It makes no sense to me. Like, he was a multi-time tag team intercontinental champion. Cesaro's another one. He's another guy that really could be a lot bigger by now. Could have been a multi-time world champion. And I know his mic skills aren't the greatest, but he could have been a multi-time world champion had they actually pulled the trigger on the push. Nakamura to a certain extent too, but they didn't. So anyway, Emmanuel's second question. Speaking of upper tier, the issue isn't exclusive to men either, since Asuka in particular, oh my god, I love this question because you were so accurate, but you said, since Asuka in particular seems like she's stuck in that level too. It feels like WWE does value her, but to an extent indefinitely, to an extent indefinitely isn't trying to protect her like she was in NXT. The side effect is that she ends up out of focus on the main roster, even when she is champion, example, her current reign. Why do you think WWE isn't bothered about protecting Asuka? This is exactly what I fucking mean, dude. This is exactly what I mean. I'm so happy you brought up Asuka, because when I was saying all those men's names, Asuka was another person that came to mind, because she is another one where I will not say that the main roster has ruined Asuka. I think that'd be too much of a stretch, because like all those other people that you mentioned, she is going to the Hall of Fame. She has a lot of success. She's won almost literally everything there is to win. So it's hard to say that she's been a failure when she's a multi-time Raw Women's Champion, SmackDown Women's Champion, NXT Women's Champion, the longest reigning as far as that belt is concerned, Tag Team Champion, multi-time as well, I believe. Or no, just once, I think. No, actually twice, because she has it now, and she won it a year ago with Kairi Sane. She's won Money in the Bank, the Royal Rumble, Mixed Match Challenge, for God's fucking sakes. I mean, she has done literally everything. But again, she doesn't feel like, in terms of like top-tier stars and people that feel like, if you ask me who is the female face of WWE, it's not Asuka. It definitely does not feel like Asuka. I would say the Four Horsewomen. And again, that's because of the booking. Even Sasha and Bayley could have been bigger than they were, but at least they feel like genuine stars. Asuka, to an extent, kind of does. She kind of does, but I feel like, again, she ends up out of focus, like you said. Real quick summary here. She shows up in the main roster. She was undefeated for about 6 months in the main roster. Really, in reality, for over 2 years. But on Raw, she was only undefeated for like 6 months. She won at Survivor Series, won the Rumble. She felt like a real attraction. She goes to WrestleMania and she fucking loses, which I still don't understand to this day. I really don't get that. She fell off a cliff after that. She lost to Carmella multiple times, which was a fucking joke. She really didn't rebound until she won back the SmackDown Women's title in late 2018. But that wasn't really what got her back on track. She won the match in the main event of TLC, but then exactly like she is now, she was never the focus. She was the SmackDown Women's Champion at that point, but the focus was entirely on Charlotte and Becky. Asuka was a total afterthought. She fucking dropped the belt right before WrestleMania to Charlotte Flair in a random SmackDown, like less than 2 weeks before WrestleMania. I mean, how does that happen unless she's a real focus? Because she's not. She's not a focus. So then the whole Kairi Sane thing happened. They were complete afterthoughts for a long time. They won the tag team titles, had 3 title defenses in six months? You know, she had the feud with Becky, and that was great, but she's only a real focus for very short spurts of time. The only reason she was as big as she was last year was because of Sasha and Bayley, and that's not her fault, but because of the booking, we're thinking, oh man, Asuka's this big star. The only reason why she was on Raw and SmackDown so often last year was because of Sasha and Bayley. At no other point at the beginning of the year before Becky left, and had Becky not gotten pregnant, you would be damn sure not be looking at Asuka as the Raw Women's Champion for the better part of that year. After the Sasha and Bayley feud happened, what happened? After that was over, what happened? She disappeared. She wasn't on Raw. She had that completely forgettable feud with Zelina Vega. She had the Lana stuff going on. Who gave a shit about that? The Mickie James match happened, and that was it. People forget about that. She disappeared from the show for like a month. She was barely featured going into Survivor Series, coming out of Survivor Series. The Lana stuff happened. Lana was more of a fucking focus on Raw than Asuka was. And yeah, Asuka lost to Alexa Bliss this week. That doesn't really bother me too much, but she is another one who doesn't feel as special as she should. She felt like a real attraction in NXT and early on in the main roster. She is just another woman right now in WWE. Yeah, she is a bigger star than Dana Brooke or a Mandy Rose or a Carmella even. But she should be bigger than she is. Why aren't they bothered about protecting Asuka? Because they don't see her at the same level as they do Charlotte or Bayley or Becky or Sasha. None of those people. All of those women are much bigger stars than Asuka. Even though she has accomplished more than any of those women combined, not combined, but individually she has more accomplishments than any of them, I think, aside from Charlotte, who has won the belt like a million times. But Charlotte's won all 4 belts too now. She hasn't won Money in the Bank, but it's still pretty close. Other than that, Asuka has more accomplishments than most of them. But it's because of the booking. Sasha I don't know. Her booking has not been the greatest either over the last 4 or 5 years. But she just feels like a bigger star. Maybe it's because she's a better talker. I don't know. But because it's how they book her and how they protect her and how they promote her. Asuka just, for whatever reason, she's not at that level. Why don't they see her at being at that level? Is it because she's Japanese? I don't know. I feel like that might be part of it. They have never really made a genuine top star out of a Japanese talent. Ask Nakamura, Asuka, Akira Tozawa. I mean, you go on and name them. None of them have been at that level. None of them. Yokozuna was WWE champion, but he wasn't actually Japanese. He was Samoan, and he wasn't really a top guy for more than like a year anyway, so I'm not even really sure he would count in kayfabe. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Asuka is another one where I don't want to say, again, she's ruined, and I've said that before, that she's been hurt by the booking, and she has been, but she should be bigger than she is. Considering how good she is, she should be bigger than she is. Brandon A. from YouTube. His first question was, what's up, Dudo Goldworthy? Back in episode 314, we discussed Lord of the Rings and Star Wars because we were both fans of one but not the other. I had been listening to the Lord of the Rings books and audiobook, and you told me to give you an update when I was finished. After giving you the update, I explained that since I just got my Disney Plus subscription, I was going to give Star Wars another try, at least episodes 4 through 6. You had mentioned possibly giving Lord of the Rings another try because you enjoyed the Hobbit movies, but got bored with the first Lord of the Rings movie whenever you first saw that, which is accurate. Anyway, I finally watched the original trilogy as well as Rogue One over the weekend. I enjoyed them, but I didn't absolutely fall in love with them. My 2 questions regarding this subject are, what are your reasons I should give the prequels and sequels a try? And did you ever go back to look at the Lord of the Rings trilogy? If not, are you still willing to give them a try? I am. I haven't seen them at all yet. Again, I saw the first one like 10 years ago. I haven't seen the rest. I would probably rewatch them all. The Lord of the Rings movies, and probably not the Hobbit stuff. I am willing to watch them all at some point. It's just a matter of carving out the time. I really don't have enough time to watch a single movie, let alone 3 for as long as they are. There's just other stuff that's on my priority list, especially movie-wise, that I would rather watch before those. But it's not that I wouldn't watch them. It's just carving out the time to do so. So at some point I will. At some point I will definitely watch them. Maybe ask me again in a year. I don't know. It's going to be a while, I think, so I don't know. But at some point I will. You mentioned Dudo Goldworthy, by the way. Very funny that you mentioned that. A real blast from the past, real quickly. I'm not sure if I mentioned that back in episode 314, but there is a website that I discovered when I was in 8th grade and we were reading The Hobbit. And I may have mentioned this back in that episode, or if you looked it up yourself, I don't know. But when we were reading The Hobbit, we were instructed as part of one of our assignments to go to a website, and our homework was to find out our Hobbit name. So you type in your name, and I typed in my full name, and the name that I was given as a Hobbit, as a whatever, was Dudo Goldworthy. I think it was spelled D-O-D-O, as opposed to you spelled the D-O-D-O-U-G-H, like dough, like pizza dough, and then Goldworthy. That was my Hobbit name, and I actually liked it so much, and Dudo sounds dumb, but I actually liked it so much that I used it for the name of a wrestler when my younger brother and I did like a fantasy wrestling promotion. I used that for like our William Regal-esque character, even though Dudo's a dumb name. But that gave me a real blast from the past when you mentioned that right there. So for the Star Wars stuff, I'm glad you checked out the prequels, the movies, the original trilogy on Disney Plus, as well as Rogue One. Rogue One was a great movie. I'm glad you checked that stuff out. If you didn't absolutely fall in love with them, you didn't hate them. If you hated them, I would say don't even bother checking out the other ones. I know you said you didn't fall in love with them. This is where it kind of goes either way. If you don't check out the other movies, you're fine. Because the other movies are significantly weaker than the original trilogy. The original trilogy is still the GOAT. The Mandalorian, if anything, honestly, if you really want to watch something that I think you could enjoy, it would be The Mandalorian. And there's been other shows, The Clone Wars and shit like that. I haven't seen that in full, so I can't really speak to that stuff. The original trilogy is the best trilogy. The sequel trilogy and the prequel trilogy are full of flaws. If you're a diehard Star Wars fan, you have to watch it all. You have to watch all 9 movies. If you're not, you enjoyed them, I don't think it's imperative that you go out of your way to watch the movies. You might like them, you might pick apart, movies that you like. Like the first 2 original movies, I think are trash. Not original, but like the first 2 of the prequels, I think are trash. Episodes 1 and 2, I thought were trash. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is actually great, I think. Very underrated, in my opinion. And then of the sequel trilogy, 8 and 9 have their flaws. They're just all over the fucking place. 7 I really enjoyed. I thought 7 was a great film. Rogue One I loved. I thought Solo sucked. I was not a Solo fan. And I think The Mandalorian, both seasons have been great. So if anything, honestly, I would check out The Mandalorian. That's a lot easier to watch. It's probably going to take you longer just because, it adds up to more hours and shit. But maybe not by much because every episode's like a half an hour and there's only 8 episodes a season, I think. So, I don't think it's imperative if you only like the movies but didn't love them. I wouldn't say it's imperative you go watch episodes 1 through 3 or 7 through 9. But at the same time, though, if you're interested in checking out some more Star Wars stuff, absolutely watch The Mandalorian. It takes place after episode 6, but I think it's before episode 7, I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive it does. And I think that's just a way better show. It captures the feel of that original trilogy, and it's a completely different story, and the acting's great, the characters are great. So, I think that's worth a try. His next question: besides Chris Jericho with Judas, what are your top 5 favorite entrance themes in AEW? Mine are Adam Page, MJF, Big Swole, Kenny Omega, and Darby Allin, not necessarily in that order. That's a great question. AEW has some low-key banger songs for theme songs. All the ones you mentioned I like, so I'm going to have a lot of similar answers here. I actually named a lot more than just 5. I named I wrote down 8 to 10 here. So I also have Page's on my list. I think Page's theme is awesome. I like MJF's. I wouldn't put it at my favorite in my top 5, but it is a very good theme. Big Swole I just don't care about, and I don't care about her theme. I don't care about Big Swole, so I don't really give a shit. Kenny Omega's is also on my list. Omega has an awesome fucking theme, and I think Darby Allin also has a great theme too. So the other people I would put on my list, I mentioned those 3. The other 2 would probably be Jon Moxley. I think he has a great theme. And Best Friends. Their theme is catchy as fuck. So that would probably be my 5. Page, Omega, Allin, Moxley, and Best Friends. As far as honorable mentions, I think Sting's theme that he debuted, whenever he debuted a month or 2 ago, was great. I think Sting's theme, his song is really cool. Sting's song is great. Cody and Dustin Rhodes' themes, respectively, are also great. Cody's had his theme forever, so you kind of forget how good it is, but Cody has a really, really good theme. That would be probably number 6 for me. I just barely had to cut that one out, even though it's a great song. Dustin's theme song has really grown on me in the last year. I think he has a great theme song. It's very, not generic, but very basic, but it works. The Young Bucks have a great song. I would put theirs up there too. As well as one that's growing on me, Matt Hardy's. The broken one is good, but the one he has now, that he came out to an Impact last night, and the one that he uses as regular old Matt Hardy, has grown on me. I think they added lyrics to it, and those are good too. But just the instrumental that he's been using lately is also, it's grown on me. I didn't like it originally, but I like it now. So those are some of my favorite themes from AEW. And for the women, I would probably say Penelope Ford is oddly catchy. And I like Britt Baker's too. And also Sheeta has a great theme, aside from the needlessly long intro. His third question: after watching Darby Allin and Brian Cage last week, it made me realize something. Darby Allin versus Rey Fenix would be an awesome match and program, but I would also be legitimately scared for their safety. Would it be wise for AEW to book an angle and match with those 2 in the future, considering the liability they pose with their in-ring style, and maybe even doing things too crazy outside of the ring? I'm thinking those Darby Allin vignettes, and if Rey Fenix ends up doing similar shenanigans. Can you imagine if Will Ospreay were in AEW wrestling these 2, if he didn't switch to the more heavyweight style he is wrestling now? Yikes. Yeah, I think Rey Fenix and Darby Allin from an in-ring standpoint could be a great match. I completely agree, though. I feel like that's a fucking hazard waiting to happen. Safety hazard waiting to happen, just because Allin, the body bag shit, I think is just stupid. I liked the cage match last week, but like he has done far dumber stuff. Like when he's in a body bag and he's rolling down like the half pipe, I think that was so stupid and dumb and pointless. It doesn't prove anything other than you're a fucking idiot. Phoenix isn't as crazy. He's just a little not reckless. It's just that his spots don't always look the smoothest, so he just kind of goes high risk a little too much sometimes and just goes overboard. Darby Allin is just, sometimes with some of his offense, is just consciously stupid. Phoenix is just way too like boom, 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 like way too balls to the wall crazy sometimes where he like overshoots things and misses and hurts himself. So yeah, a match between the two, if it were to happen, AEW would have to tell him, listen, fucking take it easy out there. We don't want either of you to die. It would be a great match from an in-ring standpoint, but if it were to happen again, they would really have to take it easy. No Laura from Facebook, their question. Do you see Impact wrestlers coming to AEW on Wednesday with Kenny Omega showing up on Impact and Hard to Kill? So I don't know when you sent this in. I know you sent it in yesterday, but I don't know if you sent it in before Matt Hardy and Private Party showed up on Impact or after. I don't know if they'll show up tonight. I think it's inevitable that Impact wrestlers will show up on AEW. I don't know if it's this week. I mean, obviously we have Gallows and Anderson, so that kind of already counts. I think we could see Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan, Fire and Flav, I think are their new tag team name, show up on Dynamite, or vice versa with Ivelisse and Dynamite, or Diamante showing up on Impact. Just because I think the women, AEW has a few different women's tag teams, but they have nothing to fight for. They don't have women's tag titles. They shouldn't have women's tag team titles. Impact has a lot of great women's tag teams. So there's no reason, really, for them to have their own tag team titles, so they could just fight for the Impact women's tag team titles. So I could see that happening. I would love to see some more teams pop up on Dynamite or single stars or whatever. James Storm and Chris Sabin were on the show last night. Why don't they just show up on Impact? I think that'd be fucking cool. Rich Swann, I think, should come to Impact at some point. Omega did say on Tuesday's Impact that he's done there for now, or Don Callis said it for him. So I don't think he'll be on Impact for a while, but he will be back at some point. I think Swann and Omega have unfinished business. Maybe they face off the Rebellion pay-per-view coming up in a few months in April. Maybe that's when it happens. So yeah, I think it's inevitable. It may not happen this week because we just got Hardy and Private Party on Impact on Tuesday. They may not want to rush it. They've taken their time with it so far. It's been almost a month and a half since the Impact AEW crossover first happened. So it might be a little longer before we see more Impact people show up on Dynamite, but I feel it's inevitable. I definitely feel like it's inevitable. At E13A from Twitter, favorite birthday gift. So again, I told him last week that he asked this question last week. I needed more time to think about it, and then I'll answer it this week. So here you go. I put a lot of thought into this, and I feel like I've had a lot of great birthdays and a lot of cool gifts. Specifically, Alexis has gotten me a lot of great gifts since I met her a few years ago. I've spent now 2 birthdays with her, I think. I met her in 2018, but that was after my birthday. So she's gotten me a lot of cool gifts, a lot of helpful, useful gifts. One of my favorite gifts would probably be, in recent years, the Infinity Stone that she got me. This really cool fucking looking Infinity Stone. It's the Time Stone specifically, the green one, from the Avengers movies, the Marvel movies, whatever. I forgot, she found it on some website, and I still have it sitting here on my desk right now. That was a really cool gift. That was great. She got me a Hardy Boys t-shirt, a really rare Hardy Boys t-shirt that year, an AJ Styles t-shirt that year, all of which I wear all the time. So those were some great gifts. Other than that, I got myself a gift in buying myself tickets to Ring of Honor on my birthday. I've never gone to a wrestling show on my birthday before, and I did in 2018. And this was actually the day before I met Alexis, coincidentally enough, but I got tickets to a Ring of Honor TV taping in New York City on my birthday, June 2nd. It was a Saturday in 2018. Again, never been to a show on my birthday before. I love Ring of Honor, so I thought I would go. And it was well worth it. I took my older brother. He had never been to a Ring of Honor show before. He had barely been to any wrestling shows prior to that point, and we had a fucking blast. And again, that was a gift I got myself, but, that was a lot of fun. Other than that, I'd have to go back a little bit further. I got All-Stars, the WWE All-Stars game as a birthday gift 10 years ago. It's crazy to think it's been that long, but I got that as a birthday gift in 2011, and I played the shit out of that for a few years, including in college. My freshman year of college, I played it. That was fun. What else? I got a WrestleMania 25 DVD for my 2009. I'm turning 26 this year. This would be my 14th birthday, I guess. I got that for my 14th birthday in addition to a World Tag Team title. That was a really cool birthday gift. It was a Jack Pacific title. It was a Jack Pacific like toy title, and it was the first toy title I ever got. So that was really cool. A friend of mine got me it wasn't, I guess it was a birthday gift. It was like an early birthday, late graduation gift. I got the Intercontinental Championship, the replica title that I have now. That was, I guess, a birthday. I don't really consider it a birthday gift just because it was kind of a payback for something else. But I guess it was a birthday gift, and that was really cool. And obviously I still had that. That's probably the best birthday gift I've gotten just because it was a replica title, really cool gift. I still have it now, have a lot of signatures on it. That's a fucking cool gift. Also, tickets to Raw 2 years in a row. In 2013 and 2014. 2014, I got the tickets that night. Raw wasn't until the end of the month. That was the show that Jericho came back on and AJ Lee came back on. That was a great show. The 2013 one, though, I got the tickets on my birthday, and we went to Raw the next night in Hartford, which was awesome. And they were like, not front row seats, but like close to the front row. So that was a lot of fun. That was one of the coolest birthday gifts I ever got because it was like the next day. It was like, oh, we can go the next day after my birthday, and I got to meet Bob Backlund that day. That was a really fun night too. So those are some of my favorite birthday gifts. I have a lot more favorite. I don't really think about gifts. I think more about like birthday memories and stuff like that, and good birthdays. Like last year, I had one of my favorite birthdays ever. I would say nothing like I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I didn't go to New York for Ring of Honor like I did 3 years ago. But it was still just a great day. I think more about that stuff than I do the gifts, but those are some of my favorite gifts too. He sent me a question saying, do you ever think about this? And it was a link to a tweet that someone tweeted about like, oh, I think about this all the time. And it was like this chart of like which wrestlers look like who. I don't think about that at all, actually, but the tweet was pretty clever. So I forgot the name of the Twitter handle, the person who tweeted it. But you can just check out Emmanuel's Twitter, at E13A, and it's on there too. So, no, I don't think about that at all, but I thought the chart was funny, though. At noob_n_co1991, what are your thoughts on the Asuka and Alexa Bliss, or what were your thoughts on the Asuka and Alexa Bliss segments on Raw this week? I find it very interesting compared to the Charlotte Flair and Ric Flair and Lacey Evans storyline. It got me invested in both Asuka and Alexa Bliss, but fans hate it. So, yeah, I actually liked what they did on Raw this week, and I'm probably in the minority there because I think Raw is just a chore to sit through most weeks, and it was this week too, but I thought the Asuka and Alexa Bliss stuff I liked. The Orton promo, it was a mixed bag. I liked it, but it went on way too long. I have been enjoying the Alexa Fiend Orton stuff on the whole. I thought the Asuka Alexa Bliss match was exactly what it needed to be. I liked the execution. I liked that Bliss won. Asuka's just, I don't really care about her at this point. I didn't care about her previously anyway, but, Alexa picks up a big win. Yeah, the Charlotte Flair and Lacey stuff, as I said last week, it's just a shit storyline. It fucking sucks. I don't care about the women's tag titles. I don't care about Charlotte at this point. I don't care about Lacey Evans. The whole shit with Ric Flair, I don't give a fuck. So yeah, the Asuka and Alexa Bliss stuff, at least I give a shit about. And yeah, fans hated it. I think there were a lot of people that did not like the ending to Raw, which I completely understand. It's all really a matter of preference. I liked it, and I don't say that about most stuff I see on Raw. This I would normally hate. I hated the fucking Orton's going to threaten Alexa Bliss to kill her with fire. I thought that was stupid. What we got this week, though, I actually liked. I didn't hate it, so yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. Kind of going off that, their next question. With Charlotte and Asuka having their own storylines on Raw right now, who will come out of both stories as the face and the heel? I'll probably have Charlotte come out as the face for beating Lacey, and Asuka as the heel after coming in contact with Alexa. That's a great observation. I wasn't really thinking about it like that. The whole hurt and the heel, pain and pleasure, blah, blah, blah. Or pain and play. It's not pain and pleasure. It's pain and play, I think, are on Alexa's, her gloves and whatever. So anyway, yeah, no, I liked what they did with those girls on Raw with Alexa and Asuka. I enjoyed it for what it was. The Charlotte and Lacey shit, I don't give a fuck about, as I mentioned. If you have to have one of them turn heel, which I think is inevitable, Charlotte is just a better heel. Asuka can be a good heel, but I just feel like with her, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't feel like a heel Asuka versus a babyface Charlotte would work as well, because people are not going to, there's no fans in the building, but people are not going to want to see a babyface Charlotte beat a heel Asuka. Asuka could turn heel after coming in contact with Alexa on Raw this week, but Charlotte is already, showing signs of a heel turn. So I just think that makes more sense. And then if you have Ripley come up and go after Charlotte, that makes even more sense. You can't really do Ripley and Charlotte again when Ripley gets called up inevitably to the Raw roster if Charlotte's still a babyface. So that's what I would do. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, with Jon Moxley being ranked number 1 of the PWI's top 500 and being named Wrestler of the Year, did you know that the one thing left for the Shield to complete winning the aforementioned awards is for Roman Reigns to win Wrestler of the Year? I did not know that, but that's inevitable. The fact that Roman has not won Wrestler of the Year yet is kind of crazy considering all the years that he's been a top guy in WWE. But hey, he's in the midst of the best run, in my opinion, of his entire career so far. So if Roman can continue to kill it in 2021, as I expect him to, we could very well be looking at the Wrestler of the Year for PWI in 2021. He also said, did you see that PWI Woman of the Year has been discontinued for the second time, apparently, and that the female competitors can now qualify for Wrestler of the Year as well as Tag Team of the Year instead? I did not see that. I mean, I guess that can go both ways. I just feel like, yeah, the women sometimes do have better years than the men, so I guess it does make it fair as opposed to keeping it separate. But then what if there's a year where, like, Roman, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was going to say, like, what if Roman Reigns has a better year than Sasha Banks? Well, it's going to suck that Sasha's not number 1. But then I guess it's all fair. If Roman has a better year subjectively or objectively, then he should be number 1. So it doesn't really matter to me either way, but I did not see that, but that is interesting. And their third question, had the PWI Woman of the Year award continued on, do you think that Bayley could have been named as such instead? I do. I mean, my real Women's Wrestler of the Year in 2020 was Bayley. Deonna Purrazzo had a great year, I think. She'd had a great year, although the fact of what hurt it was the fact that AEW's women's division isn't really a focus for the company right now, and it wasn't in 2020. But yeah, I think, Becky took time off after May. Charlotte was gone for most of the year as well, for like this entire second half of 2020. So, and Sasha had a good year too. And if you said Sasha, I wouldn't argue with you, but Bayley, I mean, she really improved. That was what really stood out to me. Bayley improved immensely, because I thought she sucked as a heel at the beginning of the year. Her promos got better, she had better matches, she was booked very well for the most part, she was involved in main events. She and Sasha arguably had one of the top matches of 2020 inside Hell in the Cell in October, so yeah, Bayley would have been my 2020 Female of the Year. At RJ_Marceau from Twitter, what are some old Royal Rumble matches that you recommend watching? I feel like I answer this every year, but I'm not going to include any matches from the last decade, just because I feel like those are obvious. Like, for example, I would say last year's was great. The 2018 one was amazing. RJ and I were there for that one. That's one of my favorite Rumbles to this day. I think one of the best Rumbles they've ever done. The men's ones, by the way, for both years. And the women's have been good too, but specifically 2018 and 2020. The 2016 one I also thought was amazing, and 2013 was good. And I like 2011, but in retrospect, it wasn't amazing. Those are all recent ones. Older ones, we'll start with like the more recent ones and work our way backwards. I have 5 right here, and there's probably more I'm not mentioning just because I haven't seen all the older ones in a while, like for example, the first ever Rumble, or like the 95 Rumble, or the 97 Rumble. I haven't watched those in forever, so I can't really say those. I'm going off the ones that I've seen recently, and that I think I know off the top of my head for a fact are really, really good. 2010 was a great Rumble. That was the one that was won by Edge. You had he's made that surprise return that year. You had the CM Punk story being told. There were a lot of cool things happening in that Rumble. Triple H had a great run. Shawn Michaels had a story. Cena had a story. Batista had a story. He had some legacy stuff going on there. Beth Phoenix was in the Rumble that year. I thought that was an amazing Rumble. The first one I ever watched as a fan, live, not in person, but live. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it still holds up to this day. The 2008 Rumble, where Cena made a return and won the whole thing at MSG, was a very special one. That was a great Rumble. A lot of stories told, a lot of fun moments, a hot crowd, great atmosphere in MSG. Love that one. Alexis and I just rewatched the 05 one the other day. That one's still a very good one to this day. That was the one that was won by Batista. A lot of cool moments, surprises, stories. It was the whole Raw versus SmackDown thing, but I thought it was very well executed overall. 01 was a great one, just a fucking wild Rumble. Honky Tonk Man was in there. That was the one where Kane just killed completely everybody. Stone Cold had a great showing and won the whole thing. That was an awesome Rumble. Again, very hot crowd, so that's one to watch. And the 1992 Rumble, which is probably still the greatest Rumble to this day, for the WWE Championship, a very special Rumble for that reason alone. Ric Flair's first Rumble, wins the whole thing. A lot of different stories with Sid being in there, and Hogan, and Piper, and all this other different stuff. I think Backlund was in that one too. That was a great Rumble. So yeah, 92, 01, 05, 08, 2010. From, Rumbles not from the last decade. All of those I would recommend you go out of your way to check out. His second question, out of the big four, where do you rank the Royal Rumble? It's entirely subjective because some people might say, the Survivor Series is my favorite pay-per-view of the year. I'm not sure how many people would say that. I've never met anyone that has ever said that. For me, I would rank the big four as this. Survivor Series has got to be number 4. The Raw and SmackDown stuff is very hit or miss. Last year, or 2019, it was a great show when NXT was involved. But it is objectively the least special of the 4 pay-per-views. Although it has more of a gimmick, quote-unquote, than SummerSlam does, I always look forward to SummerSlam. I think SummerSlam may have used to be my number 2, but it's got to be either Rumble or WrestleMania at number 1. SummerSlam has got to be 3, and I've been to 2, so that's why I regard it so heavily. But I've also been to 2 WrestleManias, and I've been to a Rumble too. So 4 would be Survivor Series, 3 would be SummerSlam. I think with WrestleMania, it's WrestleMania. It's the Super Bowl. I know people love the Rumbles because of the exciting moments and stuff, but you don't really have this great of a build of the Royal Rumble. The Rumble sells itself. With WrestleMania, you can have a great build, a lot of different matches to look forward to. Now it's 2 nights, which is cool. I like that because last year I think it worked out well. So yeah, I'm really digging, I don't really know what I'm digging. I'm not really sure why I said that, but I've always dug the Royal Rumble, I guess is what I meant to say. And the road to WrestleMania, to me, though, it just can't be beat. It's a very special night, also full of surprises. The entire WrestleMania weekend is the most special time of the year. Rumble is a one-night thing. WrestleMania feels like an entire fucking week. From Mania itself, to the TakeOver before, to the Hall of Fame, to the post-WrestleMania Raws and SmackDowns. That shit just cannot be beat. So I got to go WrestleMania number 1, Rumble 2, SummerSlam 3, and Survivor Series 4. And then finally, the final question from @Scarlet1, best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars from last week. The best from Dynamite first, I really enjoyed Pac and Kingston. I thought they had a good opener. I thought the Elite stuff with Gallows, Anderson, Omega, and the Bucks, that whole thing, that whole story was well done. Serena Deeb and Ty Conti had a surprisingly very good match. And Conti is on her way up. She's improving. Deeb is great in that role, that gatekeeper-esque role. She's awesome. And I also really enjoyed the Darby Allin-Brian Cage main event. So I thought that was all great. There's no low points or no worst from NXT. I thought NXT was a very good show overall last week. Pretty solid show. Not overly exciting, but everything served a purpose. Enjoyable 2 hours. The only worst parts of the Wednesday Night Wars last week were strictly from Dynamite, in my opinion. The Inner Circle stuff, which was mildly amusing, but they got to get to the fucking next chapter of this shit. I just don't give a shit about the Inner Circle and their New Year's resolutions or who's the official tag team of the group. Who gives a fuck? I just don't care. So I didn't give a shit about that. And also the waiting room with Cody, who said nothing, by the way. Jade Cargill and Red Velvet. I just don't care. I really don't care about Jade Cargill. I don't care about Red Velvet. Cody's spinning his wheels right now. Is he still feuding with Shaq? Like, what the fuck's going on here? So that whole segment sucked. The best of NXT, I really enjoyed all the Dusty Classic matches, specifically the debut of MSK, who had the best match of the night, and the main event was good too. And also Grizzled Young Vets and Everrise was also a fun match. So again, the entire kickoff of the men's Dusty Classic was very good. Candice LeRae and Shotzi Blackheart, I enjoy both of them very much. I think they're both 2 of the brightest stars in that women's division on NXT, so I really enjoyed their opening match. And the Timothy Thatcher, Tommaso Ciampa sit-down segment with Wade Barrett, which was pre-taped. It wasn't in the ring. It was like not even a backstage thing. They were like in the ring, but like before the show, and the lights were off. I don't know what they did, but it was really cool. And it got me even more excited for tonight's Fight Pit than I already was. So those are my thoughts on the Wednesday Night Wars, and that's going to do it, guys, for episode 373 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, January 20, 2021. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show, sending in the questions. It means a lot. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/gram.gsm.matthews. Drop your question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. And again, subscribe. In addition to liking this video, commenting, sharing it, but definitely subscribe and hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up, because tomorrow, 8 a.m., is when my exclusive conversation with the WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns goes live, both here on the channel and on Bleacher Report. Read all about it there for the highlights, but you can also listen to the full 20-minute plus conversation right here in the channel. And it's a great one. You're not going to want to miss my conversation with the Tribal Chief himself, Roman Reigns, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on the channel. And again, can't stress it enough, but subscribe for more exclusive interviews and daily content right here on the YouTube channel. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.